Hello, my loves. Continue to update new stories on Reddit, and don't forget if you like it, please subscribe and like it. Now let's start new stories. Story: New Year's Eve ruined twice. It was New Year's Eve. I was alone and lonely. It had been 3 months since I had not talked to my boyfriend. I missed him, but I knew I was helping him to come back to his senses. You see, Jude was slowly turning into an alcoholic and had already drained his money. He owed money from most of our friends. 3 months prior, he had a temporary job that paid him well. He paid some of his department and asked me to keep his card so he doesn't feel the urge to go drink, since he was planning to use the rest of the money to build up his career and open a business. One evening, we were invited in a party that was to happen in a club. I told him we should not go because I was worried that he would be too generous and drain his account. This had happened before. He insisted on going and I let him go alone but kept his card. It didn't take long until he came back in the middle of the night, drunk as a skunk. "I need my card, but I thought you'd." "What's the name on the card, yours or mine?" "It's my card, my money, my rights. Look honey, you're not well right now. Why won't you come and rest and we can talk tomorrow?" "I'm not drunk and I'm not stupid, give me my card." He was starting to yell and I didn't want to bother my roommate, so I handed him his card but asked him not to bother calling me or come to see me again until he sobered up. The next morning, I was embarrassed to hear someone saying that at the end of the night Jude was walking on all four. I pictured that image in my head, my very tall, dark and handsome boyfriend crawling because he couldn't stand. Alcohol had crippled him. This is not the life I wanted with him. My heart sank on that thought and I felt horrible for not being able to help him. I sent him a text giving him two options. Either end our relationship for good or take 6 months apart so he can think about what he wants in life, seek help and sober up. 3 months had gone by and my heart was aching for him. Every day was a test for me. I was tempted to go see him or at least call or text, but I knew one move from my part would ruin any progress he had made, if any at all. Jude and I grew up in a small town, and most of our friends were from there. We moved to the city for studies and lived in the same neighborhood. We were those cousin-like kind of friends. We cared for each other so much that everyone in the group seemed to be worried about Jude. We would have parties in our apartments, or go out, but since Jude had been not himself, they had kind of singled us out until that New Year's Eve. "Hey, are you home?" One of our friends who was a doctor calls me. "Yeah, what's up?" "I was wondering if you can come here for a moment if you're free." Finally, an invitation for New Year's Eve. I thought, okay, I'll be there. Upon entering, instead of Dr. Chris, I find Dr. Dan, his friend, sitting alone. "Hey, how are you?" "Is Chris in?" I said as I pour a glass of juice. "No, he just left, he got paged at the hospital." "Oh, I will call him after then," I said, trying to leave. "No, have a sit, I need to talk to you about something." I sit down, confused, but ready to listen. Dan looked serious and restless that my thoughts jumped to Jude. Was he okay? "I owe you something and I'm not going to beat around the bush. Do you know your HIV status?" "Okay. What is this about? Is this dude serious?" A million thoughts were racing in my mind. I wanted to curse but I never do so, but seriously, does he think I can? No, that's not why he asked this question, and yeah, he did owe me, but seriously, no one asks about HIV status to a person they're not looking forward to. I'm sorry, I don't mean. No, that's not my intentions. He said as if he was reading my mind. "I just want to give you clarity on something. You have to trust me on this. If you don't know your status yet, I have a testing kit with me here." Still confused, my guts tell me to let him test me. I stretch my head toward him without saying a word. My brain was too frozen to even feel the sting of the needle. But for some reason, I just left before the results. I went for a walk to clear my head, but instead the further I walked the heavier my head felt. I could hear my phone ringing, but I knew it was Dan and I couldn't pick it up. Somehow my walk ended up in Chris's home. Dan was still there and Chris was back. They looked happy, and when they saw me, they asked to be happy and celebrate because my HIV status came out negative. Now, I'd never been confused. Why? These people knew me from my childhood and they thought I had HIV? I felt pissed, but before I could leave, they sat me down and explained. We have known for a long time, but we couldn't tell you. Jude's status are positive, and he told me that you don't know. I disclosed this to Dan because Jude had put me in a very difficult position and I have not been sleeping. I couldn't process any of that. I was shaking and sweating, but I was also afraid to leave. Dan excused himself and left. Dan was trying to help me understand, but I couldn't hear what he was saying. I told him that I was afraid to sleep on my own, and he said I could stay there for the night. He took the couch and I took the bedroom. I didn't sleep. I wanted to call Jude, but I couldn't, and still now I wish I did. You see, in the morning, someone was knocking on the door, and for a moment I thought I was dreaming, hearing Jude's voice. I woke up and went in the living room to confirm. It was not a dream. Is it okay if I wait for her here? He was asking Chris as I entered the living room. Story: how my 3-year relationship ended and how I acted. So my girlfriend, 42 years old, and I, 40 years old, met in 2020. We started as friends trying to improve our own lives. We met on social media through a company that sells life insurance and home/auto insurance. We really get along. We decided to meet and have a meeting at my house so I could begin the process of starting to work for the company. We had to watch a video and it was so boring. So we kissed throughout the video. One thing led to another and we collided after half an hour. We had fun and were like teenagers who met in a hotel and were bunnies. We went on a date and really had fun together. How wonderful. We talked a bit about moving in together and she was about to go on a business trip, so I offered to watch her house and take care of her cats. To her surprise, she agreed. She was away for a week, so that was great. She scheduled a veterinary exam and the vet said she was on vacation instead of working. I was angry because I would rather go with her if that were true. But that's not true. I called her and she told me she wasn't on vacation. I felt bad, so I sent her flowers and she loved them. She came home for the weekend and took me home. Over the next week, we went back and forth between our homes, and with her schedule, we got busier and busier, so we saw each other less but still talked and texted like crazy. One weekend she had to work the day I got home. She said I could stay the night, but I had to go home. We slept together that night and fell asleep in each other's arms. We woke up and I made breakfast for us both. She was working from home at the time, so we just did our own things. She worked and I cleaned. I guess she liked everything I did, so she invited me to move in that same night. I said yes. We are wonderful together. Over the next year, we were best friends and better lovers. One night we were having sex and during that moment I felt a little strange. My legs were a bit uncomfortable and tingling. With that came loss of sensation and I couldn't really get excited, if you know what I mean. I tried to finish like she did and I couldn't. We tried to have sex several times and sometimes we both got fortune cookies. I also started not feeling it as much there. During that time, I spent more time cuddling. Although I didn't tell her I was trying to make up for the lack of sex. Nothing worked and I felt less of a man every time we tried to have sex. It got to the point where I felt so bad, I stopped trying and started sleeping on the couch. She felt abandoned and I tried to explain my feelings. She said she understood and for a while she did. We gradually drifted apart but still lived together. At this time, my hips, back, and legs were getting worse. I lost my job and had to find another job. I lost those jobs too and started going to a deep dark place that I couldn't escape from. I started therapy and medication. Those medications did not help the physical aspect I was experiencing. It was even worse when I almost forgot that I had a downstairs. I got so bad that I lost the feeling of a full bladder. Back to the end of 2023, when we were both arguing and not meeting each other's needs. Now, a few weeks ago, she decided to break up with me. She said she wanted us to remain friends. I'm okay with that. Not even 24 hours later, she had a boyfriend and was sleeping with him. I'm so hurt. I became really dark and deep. I'm angry, I'm still in love, I'm losing my life. I'm losing my house. I do not know what to do. I don't know where to go. I have never been without a home, and here I lost everything. She and I are like oil and water, cats and dogs, care YPS and bloods. I found solace at the bottom of a bottle of Jameson. I have no one to talk to but her. She has her friends. My mind is broken and my heart is broken. I have never been so crazy. I actually started talking to myself and answered, no lying. Today, I'm at my dad's one-bedroom apartment. Sleeping on couches and living in boxes. I thank God that I have a roof over my head, but I had to leave my life behind. I had other health problems before the new neurological problems. I'm still angry and still in love. I do not know what to do now. I applied for disability benefits and had to meet with a judge about the matter. Other than that, I don't know what else to do. Story: weirdest relationship I've ever had. A few days ago, my relationship came to an end. It was only 3 months long, but the whole thing was a wild roller coaster of unbelievable and unpredictable events. Looking back, I feel like a gullible idiot and don't blame anyone for feeling the same towards me. But to my defense, a lot of the details pressured me into trusting and staying in the relationship. I am not new to relationships and never had an issue getting girls, but right before I started this roller coaster, I was in a 2-year relationship that I ended because I just realized we were not really compatible due to not sharing any hobbies and a decent language barrier. I felt terrible for hurting her, but after having 5 months to improve myself and really think about what I wanted in a relationship, I felt ready to date again. I got on the Hinge dating app and quickly got into the groove of flirting, talking to girls again. I, 27 was not interested in hookups and was only searching for potential relationships. I eventually picked the girl I ended up dating, 27F. Her sexuality was labeled pansexual, which kind of threw me off, but after some research, it just seemed like being a picky bisexual. Not a big deal. Our conversations were surprisingly fun and unlike any girl before. She had a good sense of humor and seemed to be down to earth, sharing the same morals and boundaries I had. She was not much my type physically, but her personality made me really attracted to her. After a few days, we talked on the phone for hours, and she eventually tells me she has only been on one date in her life and has never had a boyfriend, and obviously the things that come with it like virginity and so on. Understandably, I am quite skeptical and find it weird, but all I can do is keep an eye out for signs of lying. I would usually move on respectfully after hearing this because it is a lot of pressure, and if things don't work out, you'll feel terrible. But we clicked so well, and I really felt like I found the match I never had before. We talked for about another 2 weeks before meeting. During this time she tells me she would like me to know something about her before moving on. She has been diagnosed with BPD, borderline personality disorder. I ask her what that all entails, and she describes it as when she gets mad about something she can get extremely mad. It sounds scary, but from so many stories she has told me, it seems like she honestly doesn't get mad enough to be honest. Such as forgiving people immediately for doing terrible things like totaling her car or scamming her. With this in mind, I don't make it a big deal, but again, keeping an eye out for those symptoms. Scheduling to meet was hard because she works 6 days a week and gets off late. We planned to meet at a 24-hour restaurant to sit in a car and talk, but last minute she decided to just come over to my place. This is a little strange for a first date that's not a hookup, but I assume she feels safe because I am in a wheelchair. She comes over, and we have a great time talking until 4 a.m. and she leaves. The next day she is saying how much fun she had and is surprised I didn't try to make a move on her. I explained that since she is a virgin and all, that would be really inappropriate for me, not to mention she worked all day and went to the gym before coming over. Gross. She said it was really respectful, but if I would have tried to, she would have probably had sex. I feel really weird considering the bizarre nature of a virgin of 27 years willing to give it up so quickly. I begin not to believe her obviously. She tells me that it's just because she is tired of not knowing that part of life and just wants to rip the band-aid off. I ask why she is a virgin in the first place and explains an extremely traumatic event that happened to her as a child. I try to be understandable and it does seem logical, so I continue with her. I tell her to really make sure that's what she wants, and we can go ahead and do it. So the next day, we do. She definitely acted like a virgin considering how awkward and unnatural it felt despite my best efforts to make things comfortable and straightforward. Right after sex, she says we should get matching tattoos, something with names. Dumbfounded, I tell her how insane it is to even think about that, and I would never get anyone's name on me. She insists that she would never regret it even if things did end badly. I try to explain why it's crazy, but drop it, chalking it up to just losing her virginity and emotions are high. She then asks if I want to hear something crazy. Sure. She said that she wanted to get a surgery to have a grafted penis attached to her body above her vagina. Not joking. I try to stay calm and just ask questions because for me, and probably the world, this is insane. She might have picked up my concern because when I ask when she wanted this, she says as a kid and she knows it is a crazy thought. I feel relieved, and it probably made the tattoo thing seem so insignificant it was out of my head. Fast forward a month, and we are in a full-on relationship. No other weird things happened during this time. But one night she is drinking, she shares a story with me. She's getting emotional explaining how a long time ago her cousin was telling her about a new surgery that could give her an almost fully functioning penis, but it turned out to be a lie. She then says that it is something she always wanted and will always want. I get pretty heated in the moment, questioning why she said it was not something she wanted only a month ago. She tries to say that is how she felt in the moment when I asked her initially. I explain how it makes no sense, and eventually she says she was embarrassed. She then gets defensive and says she thought if you loved someone it shouldn't matter. I tell her I don't live in a fairy tale, and I ignore 99.9% of people would stay after something like that. Just so it's clear, I am not talking about being transgender, I am talking about having a Frankenstein penis made from random parts of your body. I explain how it would not feel or function like a penis whatsoever, and at that point, you are just insane. She then tries to argue about how it is probably possible to do that, and I explain how complicated nerves and technology isn't even good enough to fix nerves for a broken back like mine. I tell her if she plans on doing this, she will have to find someone else that is okay with it. She explains that she wouldn't do anything that her partner wouldn't like, so if we are together, it will never happen. Looking back, I am embarrassed I did not leave because obviously she has some serious issues, but I was trying to not be judgmental considering I have told her so many things about me and she gave me the same curiosity. After that night, I kinda blocked it out of my head and pretended it never happened. I would be happy as long as it never came up. A story about unrequited love. A story about unrequited love. This story is about a guy named Tom and the girlfriend of his dreams, Emily. Tom and Emily have been close friends for a long time, having been in the same class together since middle school. Tom always admired Emily for her beautiful appearance, strong personality, and gentle soul. However, Tom always kept his feelings to himself for fear of losing the precious friendship they had. Every time he saw Emily smile, Tom felt happy inside without daring to say it. As time passed, Tom kept his feelings a secret and felt increasingly uncomfortable when he could not share his feelings with Emily. One day, Tom decided to change and tell Emily about his feelings. He told himself that if he didn't say anything, he would never know what Emily felt about him. One weekend afternoon, Tom invited Emily out for coffee to talk. Under the warm sunset, Tom sipped a cup of coffee and said the things he always kept in his heart. He talked about his deep feelings for Emily, about the pain in his heart when he secretly loved her for a long time. Emily was surprised and silent for a moment, then she gently placed her hand on Tom's shoulder and said that she knew this for a long time. Emily explained that she always felt Tom's special care for her, but she was also afraid of losing the good friendship they had. She says that although she doesn't have the same loving feelings as Tom, she still wishes to maintain their close friendship. With understanding and courage from Emily, Tom realized that even if they did not become husband and wife, they could still keep their precious relationship. They continue to be truly close friends, sharing everything from joy to sadness, and Tom gradually finds comfort in Emily's presence in all its forms. The story of Tom and Emily's unrequited love does not have a fairy tale ending, but it is a lesson in understanding, courage, and the value of true friendship in life. Story: Weirdest relationship I've ever had. A few days ago, my relationship came to an end. It was only 3 months long, but the whole thing was a wild roller coaster of unbelievable and unpredictable events. Looking back, I feel like a gullible idiot and don't blame anyone for feeling the same towards me. But to my defense, a lot of the details pressured me into trusting and staying in the relationship. I am not new to relationships and never had an issue getting girls, but right before I started this roller coaster, I was in a 2-year relationship that I ended because I just realized we were not really compatible due to not sharing any hobbies and a decent language barrier. I felt terrible for hurting her, but after having 5 months to improve myself and really think about what I wanted in a relationship, I felt ready to date again. I got on the Hinge dating app and quickly got into the groove of flirting, talking to girls again. I, 27 was not interested in hookups and was only searching for potential relationships. I eventually picked the girl I ended up dating, 27F. Her sexuality was labeled pansexual, which kind of threw me off, but after some research, it just seemed like being a picky bisexual. Not a big deal. Our conversations were surprisingly fun and unlike any girl before. She had a good sense of humor and seemed to be down to earth, sharing the same morals and boundaries I had. She was not much my type physically, but her personality made me really attracted to her. After a few days, we talked on the phone for hours, and she eventually tells me she has only been on one date in her life and has never had a boyfriend, and obviously the things that come with it like virginity and so on. Understandably, I am quite skeptical and find it weird, but all I can do is keep an eye out for signs of lying. I would usually move on respectfully after hearing this because it is a lot of pressure, and if things don't work out, you'll feel terrible. But we clicked so well, and I really felt like I found the match I never had before. We talked for about another 2 weeks before meeting. During this time she tells me she would like me to know something about her before moving on. She has been diagnosed with BPD, borderline personality disorder. I ask her what that all entails, and she describes it as when she gets mad about something she can get extremely mad. It sounds scary, but from so many stories she has told me, it seems like she honestly doesn't get mad enough to be honest. Such as forgiving people immediately for doing terrible things like totaling her car or scamming her. With this in mind, I don't make it a big deal, but again, keeping an eye out for those symptoms. Scheduling to meet was hard because she works 6 days a week and gets off late. We planned to meet at a 24-hour restaurant to sit in a car and talk, but last minute she decided to just come over to my place. This is a little strange for a first date that's not a hookup, but I assume she feels safe because I am in a wheelchair. She comes over, and we have a great time talking until 4 a.m. and she leaves. The next day she is saying how much fun she had and is surprised I didn't try to make a move on her. I explained that since she is a virgin and all, that would be really inappropriate for me, not to mention she worked all day and went to the gym before coming over. Gross. She said it was really respectful, but if I would have tried to, she would have probably had sex. I feel really weird considering the bizarre nature of a virgin of 27 years willing to give it up so quickly. I begin not to believe her obviously. She tells me that it's just because she is tired of not knowing that part of life and just wants to rip the band-aid off. I ask why she is a virgin in the first place and explains an extremely traumatic event that happened to her as a child. I try to be understandable and it does seem logical, so I continue with her. I tell her to really make sure that's what she wants, and we can go ahead and do it. So the next day, we do. She definitely acted like a virgin considering how awkward and unnatural it felt despite my best efforts to make things comfortable and straightforward. Right after sex, she says we should get matching tattoos, something with names. Dumbfounded, I tell her how insane it is to even think about that, and I would never get anyone's name on me. She insists that she would never regret it even if things did end badly. I try to explain why it's crazy, but drop it, chalking it up to just losing her virginity and emotions are high. She then asks if I want to hear something crazy. Sure. She said that she wanted to get a surgery to have a grafted penis attached to her body above her vagina. Not joking. I try to stay calm and just ask questions because for me, and probably the world, this is insane. She might have picked up my concern because when I ask when she wanted this, she says as a kid, and she knows it is a crazy thought. I feel relieved, and it probably made the tattoo thing seem so insignificant it was out of my head. Fast forward a month, and we are in a full-on relationship. No other weird things happened during this time. But one night she is drinking, she shares a story with me. She's getting emotional explaining how a long time ago her cousin was telling her about a new surgery that could give her an almost fully functioning penis, but it turned out to be a lie. She then says that it is something she always wanted and will always want. I get pretty heated in the moment, questioning why she said it was not something she wanted only a month ago. She tries to say that is how she felt in the moment when I asked her initially. I explain how it makes no sense, and eventually she says she was embarrassed. She then gets defensive and says she thought if you loved someone it shouldn't matter. I tell her I don't live in a fairy tale, and I ignore 99.9% of people would stay after something like that. Just so it's clear, I am not talking about being transgender, I am talking about having a Frankenstein penis made from random parts of your body. I explain how it would not feel or function like a penis whatsoever, and at that point, you are just insane. She then tries to argue about how it is probably possible to do that, and I explain how complicated nerves and technology isn't even good enough to fix nerves for a broken back like mine. I tell her if she plans on doing this, she will have to find someone else that is okay with it. She explains that she wouldn't do anything that her partner wouldn't like, so if we are together, it will never happen. Looking back, I am embarrassed I did not leave because obviously she has some serious issues, but I was trying to not be judgmental considering I have told her so many things about me and she gave me the same curiosity. After that night, I kinda blocked it out of my head and pretended it never happened. I would be happy as long as it never came up. Story: A First Love to Remem. I, currently 20F, had this friend, we'll call him Zero for this story, that I had known since my freshman year of high school. We were really close. To put it simply, we both love anime and Vocaloid. We would watch songs together during lunch period and sit next to each other in Japanese class. He was 2 grades higher than me, but I didn't care. He had always been there for me for freshman and part of sophomore year, because school got cancelled due to the you-know-what in 2020. He would give me and my family presents on special occasions, and we'd do all kinds of things outside of school, going to each other's houses, going to the movies, going to anime conventions, you name it. He was very supportive as well, and was always there for me whenever I needed somebody to talk to. And I was there for him as well. He was like a brother to me, although I have a brother myself. He also got along very well with the rest of my family. It was like he was an additional family member to them. However, I should have known these times were too good to last. Fast forward to October 2022, my mom tells me that Zero texted her. He has her number because previously, she gave it to him when we went to cons in case of emergency, saying that he has a crush on me. She wanted to know how I felt about it. I told her that I didn't see Zero the same way, and that he's just a good friend to me. My mom assured me that even if I see Zero romantically, she's all for it, but reminded me that I shouldn't get serious about dating until I finish college, because according to her, education comes first. Other than that, she was pretty much fine with the whole idea. I will get into detail about their conversation later. Now, Zero has been through a lot of different girlfriends. Even a boyfriend. He's been open to me about the different people he's dated, and why he broke up with them. He also has a very confusing life, bouncing from job to job, trying to find a place to live, many things that I can't keep up with. He also told me he has bipolar disorder and has had ugly meltdowns in the past, and how badly he's been bullied in his childhood. He told me that I was his very first friend he met in my high school, the school he transferred to where he met me, and that I saved his life in a way. But I think after my mom informed me that Zero had a crush on me, Zero admitted it to me, but he said he gave up on the crush because he just saw me as a friend, the same way I did. I thought it made sense, because he was seeing a girl at the time. Or maybe he wasn't, I can't remember, honestly. After that conversation, Zero messaged me somewhere in June 2023 that he thinks my mom is pushing me and Zero to be a couple. I was taken aback by this kind of statement. There's no way my mom would do such a thing. I said these things to him, and he said to me that he would rather not have me talk about it with my parents. He didn't really explain why, maybe it was awkward for him. But I still said I would talk about it with them. He said he wouldn't recommend it. Still, I needed to know if it was true or not. A few days later, I spoke to my mom about it. She said, "What? No way. I never said anything like that. He's lying. He's being a troublemaker. I would never force a boy on you." Going back to the conversation my mom had with Zero, I saw the messages. My mom lets me use her phone sometimes and doesn't mind when I look at her messages. Zero was talking about how he's had a crush on me ever since high school, and nowhere in the messages did my mom indicate that she wanted us to be a couple. It was mostly just, "I don't mind if you date her. But if it does happen, I'm going to establish some ground rules. You can't be out after 9 p.m., you have to tell us where you're going. And all that stuff." She was pretty chill with it and didn't shame him, force him, or anything. It was just being open to it, but also being a mom and making sure that the two of us were in a good position to date before we ever got into it. That was the only time they had ever texted each other, as there were no more messages beyond October 2022. So I texted Zero and told him, "Hey." I told my mom about it, and she said she never said anything like that. "I'm not trying to call you a liar, but is there some sort of proof that indicates that she ever forced us to be a couple?" He then texted me back, quote, "So, let me get this straight. You ignored my feelings, and now you expect me to help you? Some friend you are." I was taken aback by this, as I had no idea he was going to get this angry over it. I was expecting him to be compliant over it, not this. He then says, "I'm no tool, so I don't appreciate being used. Normally, when people do this kind of thing, I turn them into social experiments. However, out of respect for all the years we've had together, I won't. But never contact me again. Goodbye." I then got so panicked. I frantically texted him to please listen to me, to which he replied, "You have 5 minutes." I then apologized for telling my mom about this, as I just wanted to know if it was true about the forcing thing. That I'm sorry for hurting his feelings and all that stuff. He then said, "Okay, but here's the thing. Because of what you did, you put me in a tough position with your parents, so therefore, I'm not coming over anymore. We can only be friends virtually." I didn't think much of it, as I thought he would soon get over it. He pretty much just accepted me back as a friend. We talked normally again, as if nothing ever happened. Until I decided to tell him, I still can't believe I made that mistake. He told him, "You're still my friend and I forgive you. I'm over it. You just have to forgive yourself." I told him I'm tired of the tension between my family and him. He told me, "There's no tension. I just won't come over anymore. My pride won't let me." I didn't understand it. What does he mean by pride? I let it be. Days later, I asked him, "What would it take for you to come back?" He then said, "To be honest, I don't think anything will. It's hard to explain, but my pride won't let me see you." I told him that my parents aren't really mad at him, it was all just one big misunderstanding, but still, he said, "All I can say is, I just can't go over there. It feels wrong." I figured maybe he's just embarrassed, so I let it be again. I had tried unsuccessfully multiple times to convince him that nothing is wrong, he's welcome to come see me and my family again, but still, he kept saying he wouldn't see us again. Aside from that, we still had normal conversations. I thought maybe he needed to hear it from my parents that everything was fine, not from me. So I asked my dad to call/text him. My dad did that, but there was no answer. He then texted him, "Hey Zero, how are you? I just want to see how you're doing, as it's been a while." No response. Days passed, and my dad told me Zero still hasn't replied. My dad then said, "Oh well. If he doesn't want to talk to us, that's fine." That was the part when I decided to tell Zero everything about how I felt. I told him I was tired of his excuses to not see us again, that I just wanted our friendship to be back the way it was, and that it's like he just doesn't understand that nothing is wrong between us. I also mentioned that I didn't understand how he got so upset over the fact that I told my mom about the forcing thing. That I couldn't deal with it anymore. I just wanted things to be back to normal. His responses didn't really make it much better, but he cleared up some confusions. Or so I thought. First off, he mentioned that he said his pride wouldn't let him see me because it's an abstract concept that you wouldn't understand, and that if anybody asks about why we don't see each other, that I should say it's because of our family's cultural differences and such, and it still made no sense to me. He also said that it wasn't like he never wanted to see me. He just didn't want to see my parents. He would still ask me how they were doing in the past, he just didn't want to see them in person or speak to them. He never said that he didn't want to see my parents, it was always you. He said he'd be open to hanging out if there was a situation where he didn't have to see my parents. He stated he was embarrassed about the entire situation. Normal embarrassment, he can get over, but this, he just couldn't. He ended it by saying that this is just something that's not under any of our control, and that I should accept it. He said maybe, just maybe, he would get the guts to see my parents again, but it's a slim possibility. So we continued things from here. However, us meeting in person never happened due to things that happened in both our lives. He got a new girlfriend with whom he helped move in with him, and became busier than ever. We rarely talked through these times. He said he didn't go through with his plans to hang out because of his new job and all the other stuff. So I let it go. For the rest of the months leading up to my breaking point, we talked on and off. I even got to chat with his girlfriend at some points, and she was friendly. But I never told her about the incident between me and Zero because I didn't want to start any drama. I then started to realize that this kind of friendship wasn't sustainable for me anymore. As much as I loved talking to Zero, I couldn't be friends with someone who wanted to leave a scar on such a beautiful relationship he had with my parents, and to just throw it all away because of one incident that may make sense in his mind, but no sense in mine. I thought maybe there's no point in continuing with this friendship. It was just making me sad, being constantly reminded that this person is no longer coming to my house frequently, to make jokes with my family and play with my pet cats. It felt wrong just to be a virtual friend to him. I was tired of making myself feel miserable about this part of our friendship that was missing. So in June of this year, I sent him a message saying that I couldn't do this anymore, I think it's best we go our separate ways, and it's obvious that we have our differences. He pretty much accepted the fact that I didn't want to continue with the friendship anymore, and we ended things with peace. I always wonder to myself if I was at fault for making our friendship end the way it did. Part of me feels like I never should have told my mom about what Zero told me, where he thought my mom was pushing us to be a couple. Maybe then our friendship would have remained how it used to be. I even told my parents that I decided to end things with Zero, and while they accepted my decision, they reminded me that I have the right to cut someone out if I feel like they're not the right friend for me. In this case, Zero's unwillingness to make up to my family, to let the past go, for whatever reason in his mind was just not doing it for me, albeit we did everything we could to assure him everything was fine. I've talked to some of my other friends about this story, and each and every one of them have said that it's the stupidest thing that Zero did. That no friend would do such a thing over something so trivial. They even suggested that Zero lied about my mom saying that to him just so he could date me, and now he can't look at me because he got caught in his stupid lie. They also told me it's best I let him go, but at the time, I didn't want to, as I just wanted to give Zero the benefit of the doubt. But as time passed by, I thought, what's the point of trying to water a dead plant? Maybe I should have let Zero end things right then and there last year. Story: Finding Strength in Solitude. In the bustling city of Seattle lived a man named Daniel. At 33, Daniel was a successful architect known for his innovative designs and attention to detail. He lived in a stylish apartment downtown and enjoyed a life filled with friends, hobbies, and adventures. Despite his fulfilling life, there was one question that seemed to follow him everywhere: why are you still single? Daniel had been in a few serious relationships over the years, but none had worked out. His friends were mostly married or in long-term relationships, and family gatherings often involved subtle, and not so subtle, comments about his single status. While these remarks stung, Daniel was determined not to let them define his happiness. One rainy afternoon, Daniel decided to take a break from his hectic schedule and visit a small, cozy cafe he had recently discovered. As he sipped his coffee and watched the raindrops race down the window, he reflected on his life. He realized that he had always been someone who found joy in solitude and personal growth. He decided to embrace his single life and focus on the things that made him happy. Daniel started by making a list of personal goals and adventures he wanted to embark on. At the top of his list was a solo trip to Iceland, a place he had always dreamed of visiting. A month later, Daniel found himself standing on the black sand beaches of Vik, feeling the cool Atlantic breeze against his face. The breathtaking landscapes, with their glaciers, waterfalls, and volcanic formations, filled him with a sense of awe and wonder. During his travels, Daniel met other solo adventurers from around the world. He bonded with a fellow traveler named Sophie, who was also exploring Iceland on her own. They shared stories of their journeys and dreams, forming a friendship that enriched their experiences. Sophie admired Daniel's courage to travel alone and pursue his passions, and their conversations helped Daniel see the beauty in his solitary path. Back in Seattle, Daniel returned to his routine with a renewed sense of purpose. He threw himself into his work, taking on challenging projects that pushed the boundaries of his creativity. He also took up photography, capturing the city's architectural marvels and natural beauty through his lens. His photos garnered attention, and he was invited to exhibit his work at a local gallery. One evening, while attending the opening of his photo exhibition, Daniel ran into an old college friend, Kevin. They hadn't seen each other in years and quickly fell into an easy conversation. Kevin was intrigued by Daniel's stories of solo travel and personal growth. They exchanged numbers and began meeting up for coffee and hikes, enjoying each other's company without any pressure or expectations. As months passed, Daniel's life continued to flourish. He found joy in his solitude and fulfillment in his pursuits. He and Kevin grew closer, and their friendship deepened into something more. Daniel appreciated that their relationship was built on mutual respect and understanding, allowing both of them to maintain their independence while sharing their lives. One day, as they stood on a hilltop overlooking the city, Kevin turned to Daniel and said, "Daniel, being with you feels like an adventure. I admire your strength and the way you've embraced your life. I'm glad we reconnected." Daniel smiled, feeling a sense of contentment and clarity. "Thank you, Kevin. I'm glad too. But remember, our happiness comes from within. We're choosing to share our journeys, not complete them." In the end, Daniel's story was not about finding love in the traditional sense, but about discovering and embracing himself. He had learned that being single at 30 was not a state of lack, but a canvas for creating a fulfilling and meaningful existence. His journey was a testament to the power of self-love, independence, and the endless possibilities that lay ahead when one embraces life wholeheartedly. Story: My wife said she loves me and her ex-boyfriend. To give context, I am 30 years old and have been married for 2 years to my wife Jane, the love my life. I am a pediatrician and earn a good salary, so my wife doesn't have to work. She and I have always been very close. We met through a mutual friend. It was quick, but even so, there was a very strong connection. I have always been somewhat shy and reserved, while she, on the other hand, is very sociable and likes to party. I have never had a problem with this since we have always had a very good relationship based on trust. A couple of months ago, I came home late at night after a long day at work. I was heading towards the bedroom when I saw Jane sitting on the bed, looking at her cell phone and laughing. I approached her, and she quickly turned off her phone, using the excuse that she was just talking to her sister. I believed her since I had a lot of trust in her. While we continued our conversation, she brought up the topic of Scott, her ex-boyfriend. I didn't have a problem with him since they had remained friends, and I liked him. She told me he was in town and that they were going to meet up the next day. I trusted her and didn't see it as something bad, so we left it at that. The next day, when I came back from work, also late, I entered my house and saw them sitting on the couch, chatting cheerfully. I couldn't help but feel a bit annoyed, but I tried to ignore it. I approached them and noticed how Scott got a bit nervous, and my wife reassured him. She told me she had invited him over to show him the house, and I didn't think much of it. We chatted, the three of us, and everything seemed normal, or so I thought. Things changed a week later. My wife told me that Scott would be staying for an entire month for work since he lived about 3 hours away from our city. While I was at my office, I received several messages from my younger sister, who is a 21-year-old girl close to my wife. She told me she had seen Jane and Scott at some kind of party together, kissing. She then sent me a photo taken from a distance where you could indeed see them kissing. I couldn't believe it. I was at work and wanted to die. I never would have imagined that my wife, whom I love so much, was with that man. I felt devastated. After finishing my workday, I returned home as usual, feeling sad. I entered and saw my wife. She greeted me with a smile as she usually did. I sat down next to her and told her what I had found out. At first, she denied it, but then with a sad look, she admitted it. She confessed that she still had feelings for her ex-partner, but that she also loved me very much. She said her heart was torn between Scott and me. She didn't want to leave the life we had built, but at the same time wanted to be with Scott. I felt terribly bad. I don't have the words to describe how I felt when she told me that. The woman I thought I would grow old with and loved me as much as I loved her was also in love with her ex. After that, without any shame, she suggested opening our marriage. I love her with all my soul, and it hurt me a lot that she said that. After arguing for a few minutes, I told her I needed time to clear my thoughts. She, with a sad look, told me to take all the time I needed but that she would wait for me. She then took her things and left. I cried for several hours. I had never felt so sad in my life. Jane, the woman of my life, loved another man. A month has passed since she left. I am not good at expressing myself with people and find it easier to write what I feel. I thought about posting my feelings here on Reddit to get various opinions since I still love Jane and what I want most is to have her back. But it still hurts me a lot that she wants to open our relationship. I don't know what to do or who to turn to. I went to therapy, but I can't find any comfort or solution. Please tell me what to do. I don't know if I was expressive enough in this text, but I still want some advice from any of you. I will give updates. Story: It's a love story. The following is the story of how me, 29M, and my wife, 30F, met and married. Like many other people, my freshman year of college was a roller coaster of emotions. Between adapting to a new life and schedule, trying to make new friends, and the unexpected death of my father, things were changing fast for me, and I was struggling to be my normal, extroverted, happy self. I became involved with a ministry in college, and this helped me find like-minded people who I could not only laugh with, but also have the ability to openly talk about my struggles. My wife was also involved in this same ministry. Over time we would have discussions, but nothing too in-depth or serious. We were friendly to each other, but never anything more than that. Flash forward 2 years and we begin to hang out more and more because of a reason I'll touch on later, and we became really great friends. This would not last long, sadly, as my wife was about to travel the world for the next 2 years doing ministry work in third world countries. When I say doing ministry work, I do not mean she was hanging at resorts 6 days a week and visiting an orphanage for an hour or so. She was truly in the trenches, spending her years in remote villages where they don't have access to electricity or running water. While she was on this trip, she didn't have the ability to talk often, but whenever given the chance, I would talk to her about her stories, and this is where I began to truly fall in love with her. There was only one small problem. See, the reason we began to hang out more and more prior to her leaving was because she began dating a close friend of mine. While she was away on this mission trip, my friend became getting extremely close with another girl. They would hang out regularly one-on-one, openly cuddle each other around others, but according to my friend, nothing more than that. I spoke with my friend about this relationship and how he was emotionally cheating, but he never listened or paid any attention. I felt it wasn't my place to tell my wife about this, because I believed my feelings that I was developing for my herb scared me from being unbiased. After years away, my wife finally returns home. Within a month of being home, my wife's friends told her about the relationship between my friend and this other girl. My wife was aware that they were friends, but she was not aware to the extent of how close they truly were. This led my wife to immediately breaking up with my friend. Now, you're probably thinking to yourselves, wow, this is great news for OP. You have to remember, the reason we became close was because she was dating a friend. Also, as my wife returned from her mission trip, I had freshly graduated college and moved 3 hours away, back to my hometown, to begin a career. I also believed in my mind that my wife was only friends with me because of the relationship she had with my friend. Nevertheless, occasionally I would travel to the college town and meet up with some college friends. When doing this, I would ask them how my wife was doing. They would always keep me updated, and eventually a mutual friend tells my wife that I have been asking how she was. This sparks our friendship as she begins texting me, but still, I lived 3 hours away, so I had no intention of beginning a relationship with her, but it was still nice to be friends again. My wife, being her caring self, began fostering a 2-month-old girl about a year after coming back from her mission trip. She did this while single and working a full-time job. Years pass and I am extremely displeased living in my hometown. See, my father was a small-town hero type of guy. Very well known and very loved. I worked hard to bring positive change in my community, but I felt every action I did I was always compared to my dad. People never meant to offend me by comparing me to my father, but I always felt like if I stayed there I was going to be living in his shadow. I wanted to forge my own legacy. One day I interviewed for a job in the town I went to college in. Somehow, I get hired. Over the summer I move back and immediately I am excited for a multitude of reasons. Soon after moving back, my wife and I begin spending a lot of time together. The 2-month-old girl is now 3 years old, and my wife and I do the silly thing and get married within 3 months of me moving. This became the greatest decision of my life. Since getting married, my wife and I have adopted the girl, made a few kids of our own, bought a house, and are truly living the fairy tale life. We've been married for several years and life couldn't be better. I tell this story because I want others to know you never know who the love of your life is. It could be a stranger, a friend, or a friend's girlfriend. This world is too short and crazy. If you made it this far, I hope you enjoyed the read. This is my first time ever really making a Reddit post. A story about my boyfriend. I don't know why, but I decided to share this story here. Lately, I haven't felt very loved by my boyfriend. He has a hard time showing love, but especially he hasn't done it in the past month or so. But this story is just a highlight in our relationship, helping me keep trying. My boyfriend's birthday is in May, and his cousin's birthday is the day before. They're one day apart and very close. He would constantly tell me stories about how his family and all relatives would have a blast on his cousin's birthday and always forget about his. How his cousin would always get more attention and more presents. He half-jokingly told me that he usually gets a book or a small thing for his birthday and that his family doesn't give him anything more. This made me feel really bad, but I thought maybe this year it will be different for him. He is such a nice boy, I couldn't imagine his family not being that nice to a literally perfect son. We call each other every day, and the night of his birthday we called too. It was about 11 p.m., we talked for quite a bit, and as it was 20 minutes before the clock strikes midnight on his birthday, he told me he'll go find something to eat in the kitchen and call me back soon. I was fine with that and waited. Once it was exactly 12 o'clock, I wrote him a big happy birthday paragraph of how grateful I am for him and just wishing him stuff and telling him I'll see him during the day. He read the message almost immediately but didn't reply for the next 10 minutes. I figured he was with his family congratulating him and stuff, so I just sat there patiently for him to answer and call back. Around 10 minutes later, he calls me. I hear his voice being happy, but he is also sobbing a bit. I was confused. When I asked what happened, he told me sorry for not answering immediately after reading my message. When he went out to the kitchen to eat, he got yelled at by his dad for no reason, just being a little too chirpy in the middle of the night. His dad then went to sleep, forgetting about his birthday. His dad is usually really strict to him. He abuses him mentally and sometimes even physically, but my boyfriend never goes into detail on that. He still loves his dad very much. He then told me that I am the only one who remembered. His entire family, parents and 2 siblings, forgot it was his birthday and simply went to bed. He was so heartbroken by that, but so extremely happy that I congratulated him. I had so many emotions flowing out of me, hearing him thank me but crying at the same time from the pain he's experiencing made me cry too. We talked and cried for several hours that night, me probably crying even harder than him. I never wanted to see my boy so hurt again. I started thinking about his gift weeks in advance, since the moment he told me about his previous gifts. I wanted to give him something special. Initially, he asked me to not get him anything at all, or a ruler at most, day before his birthday, and went shopping and made him a box of things. That box included his first ever wallet, matching couples bracelets, a deck of cards with reasons of why I love him written on every single one, some of his favorite candy, a custom t-shirt I made with my own hands and lips, a love letter and some roses inside. I believe in giving men flowers, although he's never given me any before and still hasn't. I just liked doing it, he deserved it. I also included the ruler he asked for. The next day when I saw him and surprised him with the box, he hugged me and teared up a bit. He said it was the best gift he's ever received. I was so glad he liked it. We then went to dinner and later met up with his cousins. After that, the same day, He showed my quite personal present to his relatives and entire family. He said all of them were amazed, and I felt very flattered. I spent the whole day with him. I hope I made that day unforgettable for him and that nobody forgets his birthday ever again. Bye and see you again in the next videos and stories.